Hello and welcome to this week's Roundup by blockchaingamer.biz, your source of the most relevant news in blockchain gaming space. Make sure you check out all of our news, features and interviews on blockchaingamer.biz and follow us on Twitter at BCGBiz. Today is Friday, 26th of May 2023 and I'm your host Jenny Jordan and with me is co-host John Jordan. Hi John.
Hello.
How
Happy
are you?
Friday.
Thank you. Right, in terms of investments this week, we have had US outfit Loot Labs announcing that they raised $1.5 million in a pre-seed for BoxGG, its loot box platform. We had Boomland announcing the closing of 1 million pre-seed round. The studio has announced just now that they've exceeded 10,000 players in their Battle Royale Hunters on Chain, which is currently running on Polygon's Mumbai test net. So they're very excited about that, which is quite a milestone. We had MOBA Arena of Faith, which has secured $1.75 million in a seed round led by Channel Capital. And we had OpenFort, which is an infrastructure platform for wallet integration, and they raised $3 million for their SDKs and APIs that aims to create seamless wallet interactions for their players, not for their players, for players in Web3. What can we say about these investments, John?
Yeah, so I mean, fairly small amounts on the big scheme of things. So sort of, this time last year, $1 to $2 million. You didn't.
I was going to say that.
See that.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I was going to say that because when you look at the investment list, which is kind of your gig, but you go in there occasionally to sort of update, and you realize that the total investments in 2022 were $8.2 billion. 2021, 4.3 billion. This year, which we're almost up to first half of 2023, 745 million to date, which is nowhere near, obviously. And by the end of 2023, it's not going to be anywhere near the previous 2 years.
No, I mean, in the big scheme of things, sort of the real, if you graph it, basically May 2022 was sort of the end of the sort of big investments, and ever since then, it's been sort of it's sort of falling, and it's been. I can't look it up now, but it's been sort of maybe $250-300 million a month, whereas previously some of the bigger months were like $1 to $2 billion. So that's just sort of where we are in the crypto cycle. Obviously, it's a bear market. Crypto prices are still sort of bumping along sort of where they are. And in the sort of what we talk about macroeconomics, in the macro, people are still dealing with inflation. Interest rates are very high. So this whole cost of living stuff still an issue. So there's a whole bunch of sort of uncertainty going on in general, and then we also have things like AI. So in terms of sort of what VCs and investors do is they have a certain amount of money to invest, obviously, and then they're trying to sort of get the best deals, and also they are to a degree quite attention. They're quite attracted by new shiny things. They're sort of a bit like magpies. So this time last year, crypto Web3 was the big thing, and you could sort of have these big companies doing exactly the same thing, sort of then as they were doing now, could probably raise 10 times more money on sort of big valuations. Whereas now those companies, maybe some of them can't even raise any money. Whereas if you're an AI company, you can go and raise $10 million fairly easily, because AI is like the big thing, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and no one knows sort of where the money's going to sort of flow in AI, which is sort of where we were with the Web 2 in 2021, 2022. So these are sort of fairly small amounts. These are sort of enough money to get these sort of companies sort of going to the next stage in their sort of development. So say for Boomlands, who I know pretty well, that money gets them sort of to the launch of their game, and sort of no further, and then they get some sort of get some data around the launch of their game. As you mentioned, they're talking about how many users, how many players they've got of this game. It's in open beta, I suppose you would call it, a closed beta, I suppose. Anyway, so that gets them to the next level, and then they can sort of say, we're growing, and we raise some more money there. So it's just very different sort of times.
Can anything good come though out of phase like this where the studios cannot just throw money around them however they want to, but they have to be more intentional with their spending. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, people would argue that this is the this is actually obviously much harder time for companies because it's really hard to raise money and has been really for the last year. So it's just not been a nice experience if you try to raise money. It says it takes a long time. You have to talk to a lot of people. Most people say no, which is just on a psychological level isn't fun. But one thing it clearly does is there are in a sort of boom market, which is AI at the moment. There's lots of companies that actually don't really know what they're doing. They may have smart people, but they don't really know what product they're building. There may be a lot of sort of unsmart people who don't know what they're doing as well. And in a boom market, sort of everyone can raise money because there's just loads of money floating around, and no one knows. Sort of investors, they make their best. They do their best due diligence over what they think is going to be successful, but no one obviously really knows. The product might not work. You may have a great product, but maybe be a bigger competitor with a slightly worse product but more marketing money, or the startup companies, the two founders could fall out, or just every manner of things can go horribly wrong. So in this sort of market, I think that if you're doing Web3 stuff, if you're doing blockchain games at the moment, you really care about blockchain games. You're not just doing it because you can easily raise $5 million and your life is easy. Certainly, knowing the Boomland people, they're really committed to doing this. So they're not going to go off and start an AI company, which sort of is not exactly what happened to Meta Fight Club, who we spoke about in sort of recent weeks. But they raised, I can't remember what was it $46 million, I think, and they did some NFTs. And they were going to do this game, and they decided it's not going to work, and they paid everyone back, and now they're doing an AI sort of tool which may work, may not work, who knows? But some people might argue, well, if they were really committed to blockchain games, they would find a way to get this blockchain game to work, but they've not. They're doing AI, so you have that sort of switching thing going on, and the people who are really committed, who are basically, there are some people, and these are the best founders in my view, and not always the most successful, but the best founders are people who have a vision for what they're going to do, and basically they're going to do it. They don't care if they're paid a lot of money. If they paid a lot of money, they can do a better project quicker. But they're basically going to they have a vision for their product. If it's a game, this is like a game they really want to make. In some ways, they don't. It's bad in that, or they don't really care whether it's going to be successful or not, but because they're just really going to make it. But those are sort of good founders because at least you can trust they're going to get something out, and it doesn't really matter what's going on around them. And I would say some of these companies, now like Boomland, are sort of at that level where they're just really committed to the space, and all this stuff tends to be cyclic. So at the moment, AI is hot and crypto isn't. When the crypto prices go up again, and maybe in a few years' time when the US isn't so anti-crypto from a regulatory point of view, then the cycle changes, and all these people who've been solidly building during the downtime, suddenly they've got sort of quite good products, and sort of people hopefully sort of are using those and flock to them and like the games. And if you just move from cycle to cycle, we probably move from crypto to AI, and then whatever the next thing's going to be, that you're not really committed to those sort of things, and probably not building very good products. So that's the takeaway there.
Another project that announced some investment was Metagame Industries, Abyss World. Well, not only for Abyss World, they're also building another game called Outset. They did not reveal any what sum they'd raised, and the only thing was that it was based on $100 million valuation. So why would a company not reveal what they've raised? Do you know a little bit more about?
It was a bit weird, that news. I mean, normally companies wouldn't reveal how much they've raised because they haven't raised very much often. So it's sort of like they sort of feel a bit embarrassed is probably the wrong word, but they sort of, normally when you raise money, you sort of want to raise, in terms of like a headline sort of news grabbing thing, you want to raise a ton of money, and everyone goes, wow, you've raised a ton of money. From an investment point of view, actually raising a lot of money often isn't very good, because it means you've raised that off a very high valuation, which means that everything has to go super well for you to maybe raise the next amount of money, or you don't have much you don't have much wiggle room. So if your company's raised $100 million and your product comes out and it sort of does actually okay, but then your company's only valued at $50 million because the thing come out and you can do cash flow analysis on it, then you sort of the investors are sort of like, oh, well, I sort of lost half my money on that. So that's one of the reasons. In this case, I'm not quite sure because it was if you go through, without getting too geeky, if you go through the people who invested into this project, it's basically Miston Labs who run the Sui blockchain, because this game's running on the Sui blockchain. So they probably would have invested, giving them some tokens, probably didn't give them any US dollars. And the other sort of main one I could see was Xerio, which is FunPlus's own blockchain gaming platform. So again, they probably wouldn't have given them money. They may have given them, some other sort of, value. So maybe my thinking here is sort of that they've raised a certain sum of money, or they've got access to a certain value, but it's not like an equity investment, or maybe even a sort of buying tokens on the game. It's maybe sort of some grants and maybe some debt. Maybe, who knows? I think it might just be sort of a complicated, sort of a rather complicated investment round of various different sorts of assets, and then that makes it hard for them to go, we raised $3 million, because they've raised maybe $1 million. I'm totally making something now. They've raised like $1 million and $1.5 million in Sui tokens that are vesting over 12 months. It all becomes complicated. The interesting bit they did say, though, which is sort of not even more odd, but they said the company was valued at nearly $100 million. So I don't know what nearly $100 million was. $98 million. I mean, if it's 95, say 95. I don't know. So that was
exactly.
That was a bit odd. And I would say that not having played that game, it's a sort of a Dark Souls sort of inspired sort of horror, sort of horror RPG sort of thing. People love those games, but they're very hard to do. Really, really hard to pull off well, I think. And $100 million is quite a big valuation, I would say. So for a blockchain games company that's making blockchain games, a sector that's not, super hot at the moment, to get $100 million valuation, or nearly $100 million, is, I would say, as we say in the sector, quite punchy. So basically, what it sort of works out as, if say they raise $10 million, then the investors sort of own nominally 10% of the company, if it was an equity sort of thing.
Makes it a little bit hard to write up news like that. Just a sort of advice for companies out there. Anyway, we also had the exciting news yesterday about the Sandbox and BBC Studios and Reality Plus joining forces to bring some content like Top Gear and Doctor Who and lots of other stuff to the Sandbox metaverse. And obviously, it's quite a big deal. The Sandbox is a big deal. BBC is a big deal. And it's the first time that
the BBC is a big deal in the UK.
Oh, well, okay. Okay. It's the first time, really, that they're making a more so substantial, established move into the Web3 and a metaverse. So anyway, they were excited about the announcement. We had Battle Bears Heroes being announced from the developer Skyview. That's come to Web3 in partnership with Sky Mavis, which is the first of its third-party titles to launch on the Ronin network. So Battle Bears Heroes is a top-down shooter inspired by the franchise's previous mobile game, BB Go. And it's soft launched in Southeast Asia, Australia and New Zealand on Google Play and the App Store. And that also takes us into talking a bit more about mobile games. So we've seen a couple of Web3 games now wanting to go on mobile and on the App Stores. We had STEPN announcing this week that you can now do in-app purchases on the Apple App Store. And you actually did go and get an NFT, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Expensive one. Why is this not so straightforward as developers might want it to be?
To backtrack a little bit, have you not too far? I mean, there are loads of Web3 games on the mobile app store, so that's not a problem. The issue has been there's sort of uncertainty around exactly what you can and can't do on the app store. So nothing at all to do with, if you were just doing a normal sort of Web2 game, previously, say 2 years ago, if you're doing it like a game through the Apple App Store, any in-app purchases had to happen, using Apple's payment system, and that meant Apple will get 30%. So if you spent $100 buying in-game gems, then Apple got $30 of that, and the developer got $70. So both Apple and Google, but to a lesser extent, have always been quite controlling, clearly, because that's how they make their money. Because it's free to put your game through the App Store, and they get their money on the purchases. So for them, they didn't like. There may be other reasons why they didn't like blockchain and crypto, but one of the reasons was if you're sort of buying stuff external to the app and then bringing stuff into the app. So I might spend $100 buying some stuff on OpenSea, and then connect my wallet to my app, and then I can bring that NFT into my game. And I've bought in like $100 worth asset, but Apple hasn't got any money. Apple doesn't get a cut of that. So that's generally why they haven't liked that. So last year, Apple sort of said, it's not that we don't like NFTs, but it's just we have to come up with some rules around it. So the official sort of rule has been that you can sell NFTs outside of your app only if that same NFT or that same sort of class of NFT is also available inside the app using in-app purchases. So there's a sort of a parity between what you're selling, and if the user can sort of choose where they want to buy it. And Apple's sort of view, I guess, is it's much easier because everyone has a credit card on their phone. So who's going to fiddle around with the website and wallets and stuff when you just do it, and then we'll get our 30%. So the sort of one of the confusing things was that Apple said this, and then no one took a blind bit of notice. It seemed everyone was not doing, and even now there's loads of mobile apps that don't have in-app purchases, and you buy your NFTs on a marketplace and then just sort of bring them in. There's like dozens and dozens of games that do that. So STEPN announced that it was the first to integrate with Apple Pay. It appears that that's actually not the first. So apparently Skyweaver has been doing that for a while, which I didn't know about. So there may be some other ones that have been doing it, but STEPN actually made a sort of big fuss about it. And so STEPN is this move to earn game, and you need to buy some NFT trainers, which are actually on Solana, BNB, or Ethereum. So it's different, a whole bunch of cross-chain stuff. And you have to buy one of these NFTs, you bring it into your app, and then you go running or walking, and you earn some of their tokens, and you can level it up and all that sort of stuff. So now with the new version, you can still do that. You can still bring in external NFTs, but also basically the marketplace. So if you're looking at OpenSea or Magic Eden marketplace, you now effectively see that marketplace in your app, in the Apple app. But all the prices are obviously not in ETH or BNB or Solana. They're in a new in-game currency, which isn't a cryptocurrency. It's called Spark, and you buy the Spark with your Apple Pay. And so you basically there's like it's $1 is worth 10 Spark. So if an NFT was worth $40, you'd have to buy $40 worth of Spark, 400 Spark, and then you buy it, and then they hold it in a internal wallet for you. And so in terms of the flow of just buying an NFT, it's much easier, 10 times easier. The problem becomes is, one of the points of NFTs is once you own them, you can sell them. So you can buy the NFT in STEPN using the Apple Pay, and then you can sell it in the marketplace. But you don't get the Spark back, because Spark is like a one-way currency. So then you get the cryptocurrency, STEPN's cryptocurrency called GTM. That's what you get back in the wallet. So then if you don't know anything about crypto, you're just like, well, what do I do with this? And basically you have to set up an external wallet, and you have to get some Sol into the app wallet to do if you're on Solana, or ETH if you're on Ethereum, and then basically pay the gas fee to get that token off into your other wallet, and then go to an exchange and swap that for Sol or USD or whatever. And then if you want to cash it out, you'd need a Binance or a Coinbase wallet. So I mean, Apple doesn't care about that. Apple cares it gets its 30%, but for STEPN, it's sort of like you made it easy for people to buy, but then you've created a whole bunch of problems for these people who presumably some of them won't know about crypto and just be like, how do I get my point of the NFT was I could sell this off again, and I can't. So I mean, maybe it's just part of the education, but to some degree, I think whenever you whenever you go through a sort of a gatekeeper, or you go into someone's Apple's walled garden, Apple makes sure it gets what it wants, but it's maybe not so good for your project, for your the long term view of your project. I mean, obviously the other the thing Apple hasn't started doing yet is kicking out apps that don't use Apple Pay. So that would be, it would sort of make more sense if you have to do this to stay in the App Store. You have to do it. But at the moment, there's sort of this weird halfway house where some people are using Apple Pay and it's easy in, hard out, and everyone else is not doing that. But Apple has said that's the way you have to do it. So there's just uncertainty. So we'll see how that all plays out. Maybe Google are going to be a bit more open, people think. And then on the very sort of far extreme, the other way, there is this Solana phone, which I've written about, which is it's I wouldn't sort of recommend it in the sense it's like $1,000 phone. It's sort of fine. It runs Android. It's not top of the range, but it's okay. But it has its own sort of inbuilt wallet and it has its own app store. So the apps in that app store could be fully blockchain integrated. Because it's the whole point of it is it's a blockchain phone. So, but there's only like a few thousand of those out there. So until sort of phone manufacturers start sort of integrating sort of blockchain enabled sort of wallets and app stores in there, it's going to be this sort of, there's going to be problems around sort of exactly how you onboard people and how you sort of how they deal with crypto and blah blah blah. So I think that's obviously if blockchain does become this mass market thing that we expect, that will happen. Samsung already has its own app store and has been doing some stuff around that. Not very much, but obviously Google and Apple are going to be sort of the last people to do it, or Apple will be the last people to do it because they make lots of money from the App Store. But they have also then lots of pressure from the EU and people like that to allow Apple to use different payment methods, not just Apple Pay. So there's quite a lot of moving parts on this one. It's a bit of a mess at the moment.
So it's something we'll keep updated on, keep following. And that's it from us for this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.